this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to cover a button and how to sew on a shank button, a flat button, and a sew-on snap. You're going to need a cover button toolkit, a needle threader, thread and a needle, scissors, a shank button, a flat button, sew-on snaps, a 10 by 10 muslin cloth, and a small piece of fabric. We're going to begin with covering a button. When you purchase a cover button kit, on the back of the kit there is a pattern for you to follow. This pattern is a semicircle pattern, and even on some you'll get a full circle pattern. The cover button kit also includes a back, a shell, a pusher, and a holder. To get started, we're going to cut out our pattern that's on the back of the cover button kit. This one is in the shape of a semicircle. So that means that when we cut our fabric, we're going to cut our fabric on a fold. So we're going to fold our fabric, put our pattern, the straight edge along the fold of the fabric, and then we'll cut around the pattern to make the fabric in the shape of and the size of the circle that we'll need to cover the button. Once your fabric is cut, you have all the parts that you need to cover a button. We're going to place the fabric on top of the cover. If you have a patterned fabric like this, you want the pattern facing down, or the right side of the fabric facing down. You're going to set the shell inside of the holder on top of the cover fabric, and you can use the pusher, this tool, or your fingers to push the shell and the fabric into the holder. Then you're going to fold the fabric around the shell, being certain to pull firmly to prevent any wrinkles on the front of the finished button. And after the folding the fabric, you're going to use the pusher to secure the fabric. Now we're ready to put the back in place. And we'll use the pusher to push down the back. You do have to push firmly, and you'll feel it lock in place. Now we can push out our button, and we've covered a button. For the next portion of this video, I will demonstrate how to hand sew on a flat button. We know a flat button because it is flat, and you'll see the threads from the top of the button. We're going to begin by creating an anchor stitch on the wrong side of the fabric. We're using a double strand of thread, and we are knotting one end of the thread. We'll create 3 anchor stitches. This is 2 and 3. Again, this is the wrong side of the fabric, so now I'll flip my fabric over and I will start by bringing the needle through one hole of the button. And at this point, I'm going to use a pen to help me create a thread shaft. You can use a pen, or you could use a toothpick or a needle. And a button that's sewn on properly has to have a thread shaft. And what the thread shaft does is it accommodates for the length, the thickness of the fabric that you will use when you are buttoning the button. All right. So with the pin in place, I will continue to sew about 7 stitches coming from under my fabric through the hole of the button and back through. And I'll repeat this about 7 times until my button is secure in place. Now that I've completed my 7 stitches to secure the button, on one side, if I were working with a 2-hole button, I would be finished and ready to tie off. But since I'm working with a 4-hole button, I'm going to repeat the same steps, coming up through the back of the fabric, through the hole, working over my pin. I'm going to sew on the needle to the fabric, and I will repeat this about 7 times to secure the button onto the fabric. That's coming up through the back of the fabric, through the hole in the needle, working over the pin to create my thread shaft, I believe this is 4. Five. 6. And 7. All right, so now that I've secured my thread through, I'm going to turn it back on the wrong side of the fabric. I am going to go underneath the threads that I've used to secure the button onto the fabric, creating a loop. I'm going to pull my needle through the loop to knot off. I'll repeat. Creating a loop to pull off, creating a knot, and now I can cut my thread. And my button is secure. Now I will remove the pin and I'll snug the button by pulling it forward. And we have successfully sewn on a flat button. Next, I will demonstrate how to hand sew a shank button. First, we will begin by creating an anchor stitch on top of the fabric this time, on the right side. That's 2. And 3. Now I will put my shank button through the needle and I'll go back through the fabric. This time when I pull through, I'm going to pull the button onto the fabric. You don't want to pull too tightly, causing the shank to sink into the fabric. Just tight enough that it stands on top. And once that is done, I'm going to repeat going back through the shank of the button, up through the shank, and through the fabric. Up through the shank, and through the fabric. That's 3. We're going to repeat this 4 times more, creating 7 stitches. Four, 5, 6, back through the button into the fabric. 6 through the button and into the fabric. This time when I go down into the fabric, I'm going to go ahead and turn onto the back and finish off. I'm going to go back through the threads that I sewn on the button onto the fabric, creating my loop and my knot. I could finish this off on top as well, depending on where you're sewing the button. I'll trim my threads, and that's complete. Next, I would like to demonstrate how to sew on a snap. This is a sew-on snap, and a sew-on snap usually has it has a ball and a socket, and snaps are normally used when there is fabric that is overlapping. So to simulate that with our muslin, I am going to fold up my fabric and I'm going to determine where I want my snap to be. So I'll say I want it about right here, and then what I'll do is insert a pin where I have determined I want my snap to be. What I'll do next is unfold the fabric and mark where my pin is on both sides of the marking. Make sure I can see this crease for my fold, and then I can remove my pin. Okay, so these are where my snaps will be. And just to test, I can fold it back this way. And what I want to do is enter my pin and my marking, and I want to be sure that it goes through to the other side. And that's a pretty good match, so I'm going to go with that. Next, I'm going to use my pin, and I will sew my ball portion onto the fabric first, and inserting my pin through my marking, I'm going to put the ball portion of the snap over the pin, and that's going to help secure it in place, in the correct place. And now I'm ready to sew on my snap. I'm going to begin by creating a few anchor stitches. 1, 2, 3, and then I'll take my thread through one of the portion holes in the snap, and I will sew this in place. Creating about 7 stitches to secure it. There's a little catch here I'm trying to pull through. There we go. It's 1 through the fabric, and then through the hole of the snap. That's 2. 3, 4, 5. That's pretty good. And then what I'll do is travel through to the next hole. Of my snap. And sew that in place. At this point, I can remove my pin because my snap is securely in place. And I'll repeat these steps until all of the holes in my snap have been sewn down. Now that I've sewn down all the holes of my snap, I'm going to capture the threads that I need sewed the snap onto the fabric with, creating my knot. That's one. And two. And I'll clip my thread. Now I'm ready to sew the second portion of my snap down in the same manner. Now that I've sewn on the socket portion of my snap, I'm ready to see how it works. So this is how to sew on a flat button, a shank button, and hand sewn snaps.